talking about the conscious community. Right now, I see, in my opinion, I value history so much on a personal level because of the way it's helped me evolve spiritually. But I see a lot of people in the conscious community are using history solely as an impetus for debate. Basically to argue. Everyone wants to argue about what happened, even though none of us were there. At least not in this body, if you believe in incarnation. But I'm very wary of going down that road. I refuse to debate. I think it's a waste of energy. But my question is, what is the value of studying history to you?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I feel like studying history, is of the utmost importance simply because, in order for us to know who we are today and, what we must do today to get to the future, we have to know the truth about who we were. Like, of course, we're taught about the slavery and all of that stuff, but if we don't, have any type of foundation from before slavery, we're starting from, we're starting from a hole in the ground, and we don't sure how we got there. Like, and we believe that we just started in this hole, and we have to try to climb out of it. Like, it's like the Sankofa thing. Like, how you have to look behind you to see where you've been to know where you're going, and like that kind of goes like into my internet name, the Revolutionary Ink thing. Like, before I got on the internet, I did spoken word. I still do it, but I do spoken word poetry, and my name was Black Ink. I'm Black Ink. I'm a writer. I write poems and novels and whatnot. But when I got on, I chose the revolutionary part, and people took that probably maybe in the wrong context. They saw revolutionary. They thought, oh, he's one of them rah-rah guys talking about fighting and all of that stuff. Until they talked to me about it and figure out what I actually meant by revolutionary. And with revolutionary, I took the root word of revolutionary, which would be revolution, which would actually be revolve. Some people think it's just revolt, but it's revolve, like, as far as like in a circle or turning around 360 degrees. And, I take that from, the perspective of, like I said, the Sankofa, where we have to look back at the history, see where we've come from, see what greatness we've achieved, what lows we've achieved, because, we can't pretend like we were great in the past and only great. We have to see all of the mistakes that we've made in order to be able to move forward as a people, And even with the consciousness, like, you get a lot of people that think that, oh, well, the key is to just go back and be the way we were way back in the day when, the key is to figure out what we were back in the day, what mistakes we made, so we can be able to evolve to another level as we move forward. So and that's what I use history for. And even in my videos also, like, I'm not just on history, but, that series that I put it out a few years ago, actually. But, I put it out. It was some information that I found out, so I wanted to share it with the people. And I also wanted to use it, and I still put out history sometimes now, but I'm not just stuck on history, but I know that, I can use that history as like bait almost to bring people in, because that's one thing people don't know about is the history, and until they learn that, they don't know how they can go farther. They don't know how they can evolve. They can't even really get into like spirituality and stuff like that when they don't even know who they are or, where they're coming from. You know what I'm saying? So, but I do really think history is really important. As far as the guys debating on it, I'll say, like, in this whole conscious community, like, there's levels of consciousness. You don't just become conscious and then, okay, we're all on this plateau and we're all conscious. Like, there's different levels of consciousness. And people don't understand that, when just because a person has information doesn't necessarily make them conscious. Just because they know a lot of history doesn't necessarily make them conscious. Or it doesn't mean that they totally exhibit, quote-unquote, conscious behavior at every instance in their life. So, yes, people can get caught up into, the bickering and the arguing and debating about history, which shouldn't be debated about, because unless we were there, we can't really debate history unless we're just citing different sources and whatnot. But then we'd have to totally 100% trust each source. And how do we know those sources were right when they wrote what they wrote? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know exactly what you're saying. And my series of videos called 2012, the first video, I talk about that. What is the source of the source?
Exactly.
Ultimately, we have to leave bibliographies behind, and we have to get into our inner truth. And like you said, history is a way to kind of draw people into that. I could definitely concur with what you're saying. For me, history, I just feel like the way the world is set up, it's based on white supremacy, and I feel like Darwinism is the crux of that, and everything is built around the Darwinism. The way history was taught to me in school and in universities, it makes you feel like we're at the height of human evolution right now. Like we started out as monkeys, and now things have never been better than this. When really, when you get into spirituality, you understand that we're at our lowest point right now. But they have you tricked into thinking that your own history is first. Well, right now you have Xbox and Cadillacs and KFC. Before that, you were fighting for your civil rights, trying to drink out of the same water fountain. And before that, you were a slave. And before that, you were swinging from a tree like a monkey. And that's it.
Right.
So what it does psychologically is it makes you think that there has never been anything better than this. There has never been anything better than the war in Iraq and pharmaceutical drugs and television, reality TV, and cell phones that give you brain cancer. So it keeps you stuck. So to me, I mean, do you think that history is like imperative for our psychological health as well?
I do think it's imperative for our psychological health because, like you just said, it has you thinking that, well, where we are now is like the pinnacle of where we've ever been. So, we'll be content being where we are now because we think, okay, hey, we moving on up. We can do this, we can do that. Hey, look, we got a president now. So we're finally becoming something in the world. Like we're finally worth something. When, if we knew what we had done in the past, then we'd know exactly how low, society is as a whole. Not just us, but society, all across the board as a whole, So I do think, like, we really need to know where we've been so we can know what state we are in now and how we can rectify this state. Like, but people are content. People are content with only what they already know, like, with as far as the history is concerned. So if you tell them something different, it's like you can be telling someone that they're great, and they're mad at you because you're telling them that. Like, who are you to tell me that I'm great? Like, this is the history that I know, and I'm just now finally trying to come into my own. Who are you to tell me that I was once better than this? Who are you to tell me that I was once a king, or we were once kings and queens, and we once ruled the earth, and we once lived harmoniously with the environment? Like, who are you to tell me that? Like, this is the pinnacle of what it is to be.
Right. I worked my ass off. I went to school for 20 years, and I'm $80,000 in debt to get the lifestyle that I have now. And you're telling me that there's something better than this? How dare you? But
exactly.
On your YouTube, you have some videos by a Caucasian man, one of my favorites, named Frank Joseph. And in the beginning of the lecture, and I think it's also on Brother Panic's YouTube called Occult Lectures. And he goes into the Olmec thing, and one of the things he says in the beginning is that it's a room full of black people, what we call African Americans. And this skinny white guy stands up in front of them, and I thought it was very brave of him, and I respected him for it. And he says, "You are psychological slaves." He said, "You got out of the physical slavery." He said, "I'd rather be a physical slave. At least I could fight that. But you guys are psychological slaves right now."
Right.
And that just really stuck with me.
And it was true. It was true. And what made it hit home with them was who it was that was telling them. Like, it could have been a brother up there telling them, and they would have heard it, and, okay, yeah, we've heard that before, or in one ear and out the other. But, the fact that it was him telling them, I'm pretty sure made some of those people in the audience really take what he was saying seriously because, unfortunately, some of our people don't really believe anything unless it comes from a Caucasian's mouth. But, it is what it is. And when people talk about psychological slavery and mental slavery and all of that, like, most people that hear it, okay, they said this, but, like, they don't really understand the depth of what that really, really means. Like, people still don't really understand what it means. Like,